Welcome back to Real Estate Today. I'm Elliot Koolik, and we're back with Lisa Pasillo of All Risk Insurance. She's actually the president. And in the other segments, we've been talking about, breaking down the coverage and explaining to everyone at home, what you're really being insured for. And then we talked about the different types of companies that you have choices, whether you go to the state fund, which is Citizens, or some of the private insurers that are, and also talking about some of the misconceptions people have about their insurance and not being overinsured. So in this segment, what I want to really focus in on is some real life stories that Lisa can kind of explain, and a lot of us can identify with some of these situations. So Lisa, explain to everybody at home, a common scenario that you've experienced that maybe they can look out for.
Okay, well, I've had some situations where I have people that were with Citizens perhaps at a time when they had no other place to go. They've called me up and they've told me their situation, and based on the year of their house being built and the structure type, I've been able to pull them out of Citizens, save them quite a few $1,000s, and put them with a standard carrier. For example, I had another woman who was living in Century Village, and I'm not really sure who insured her, but a condominium policy should only be, generally $50,000 and under. You're only insuring the interior walls. I mean, this poor woman was insured for $125,000 for a 40-year-old condominium.
Well, that's what I was trying to bring up in the other segment. How is that possible? Because you're telling me that the underwriter, is that the right?
No.
Okay. Who's the one, when you fill out that form?
The agent.
Okay. And the insurance company comes back to you and says to you, well, this is what the replacement cost is. How could it be that different?
It's up to the agent's discretion.
Oh, it is?
Well, because we're going on what the customer is telling us. The customer is signing a statement stating everything I'm telling you is true. Okay. Now, some of the older people, may not really fully understand what it is that they're insuring. So we try to guide them and help them to get the best possible policy. I haven't had to put any of my customers, really. I have a very small percentage of my customers with Citizens.
Really?
But if somebody doesn't realize that there is alternatives, which there are, they're going to just go with the state because that's what everybody knows.
Well, it seems like in the last year or two, we've had all the hurricane issues locally in South Florida, and it seems like a lot of people have been in kind of like a panic mode. Whenever their policies are being renewed, they're getting letters that either their premiums are going up 2 or 3 times, or they're being dropped. So, is that what's really fueling all the business? I mean, as far as what's been going on recently?
Well, fear definitely does fuel it. However, people should just understand one thing. They can understand that they can be an informed consumer. Trust your broker, trust your agent. They're licensed. This is what they're experienced in. However, you don't have to walk into it blindly. Have a little bit of knowledge about what you're looking for. Know that there are alternatives other than the state. Know that there are savings and endorsements that you're entitled to and credits. Ask about them. And, more importantly, just know what it is that you're looking for. And this way you make the best decision based on your education.
I think one of the reasons a lot of people aren't as informed about homeowners insurance, they say the average person moves every 5 to 7 years. With health insurance, your family changes, your kids, you were pregnant, so you're always kind of revamping your health insurance. Same thing maybe with your life insurance. Sometimes you have term, sometimes you have whole life, you have a combination as you get older. There's different types of insurance that you'll get as it relates to life insurance, but maybe the fact that the occurrence of moving all the time doesn't happen as much, maybe they're not as informed. And when all of these issues happened over the last few years, which maybe didn't relate to moving as much, people were kind of caught off guard a little bit. And when the insurance company says, well, so-and-so huge insurance company nationally is just pulling out of Florida, everyone starts saying, well, am I going to be able to get insurance? Or if I have a situation, is it going to be funded? So
they get, very complacent with what they have, and they just kind of stay with the average thing. But all people really need to concern themselves with if a carrier is admitted into the state of Florida. If they were to go out of business, they have to be backed by the state. The state would take them into receivership, like what happened with the other companies in the past.
Right. So there's no real fear. I mean, most of the private companies that you would put someone in, are they all rated? Is there a rating system for those companies?
They're all rated. The companies that we deal with are rated through a company called Demotech. You know, every company is rated through a different thing. Everything is based on the age of the company, how long they've been in business, their reinsurance, you know, things like that.
Now, are these companies typically part of a bigger insurance company that offers other insurance, or are they standalone companies?
Standalone.
So they're all specifically homeowners insurance?
Well, I mean, I do have other companies that are part of larger companies, but for the most part, the companies are Florida-based, and that's what they do.
So if you had a crystal ball, which I don't think you do, but let's say you did, and you were kind of looking at the landscape of what's happening with the real estate industry and homeowners insurance, and would you say it's going in a positive direction? It's kind of flat. It's, you know, needs to be revamped. I know, although I don't want to really get into it because it's, you know, still up in the air. I know there's been some legislation to try and reduce some of the premiums as far as what people are paying. Well,
the companies were required to file a rate reduction by June 1st. You know, just based on what I've looked at on the TV and on the news, just like everybody else, it looks to be about 10 to 15% of what the current rates are. And anybody who does have a policy that is going to be taking effect after June 1st will receive the benefits this year, and anybody's policies in the forthcoming years will go on renewal. But who knows? I mean, I hope for the consumer's sake it does go down, because it is sad.
You know, I think the state is addressing it. It's putting some fears away as far as how it's being handled. So, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think, you know, I'm very confident that, you know, the future is going to be very bright.
I hope so.
Yeah, but Lisa, thank you so much for being on the show. And, you know, I really think this was, you know, a fascinating show, because it really outlined, you know, what we all really need to know as far as homeowners insurance. It seems like even when you're in the industry, it's a confusing topic. And I think, you know, we were fortunate enough to have someone as experienced as Lisa, you know, especially since she's the president, that took her time to come here and explain to everybody at home all the different things that we need to know when we are looking to purchase insurance, and, you know, what are the coverages that we should look for, and not to be overinsured, but certainly not to be underinsured. So I think her information was invaluable, and I hope everybody enjoyed the information as much as I did. So thanks for coming to Real Estate Today, and we'll see you next time.